If you have your penmanship out, I'm going to read the next chapter of our book. Today's mystery is the case of the Balloon Man. The case of the Balloon Man. Leroy, Mrs. Brown called. Leroy, it's time for dinner. Wash up, please. Encyclopedia put down the book he was reading. 6 Ways to Reach the Moon on a Budget. In the bathroom, he gave his face a lick and a promise. When he got to the table, his father looked at him in a strange way. Do you know Bobby Tyler? Chief Brown asked his only child. Sure, said Encyclopedia. He was in my homeroom last year. Did anything happen to him, Dad? He's missing, said Chief Brown. You mean he ran away from home? Chief Brown shook his head. Encyclopedia gasped. Mrs. Brown stopped in the kitchen doorway, her eyes open wide. Kidnapped? Mother and son asked together. It looks that way, answered Chief Brown. Do you know who took Bobby? Asked Mrs. Brown. Yes, Izzy, the Balloon Man. Izzy? Cried Encyclopedia. No, Dad, Izzy couldn't do something so terrible. What do you know about Izzy? Asked Chief Brown gently. Do you know what kind of man he really is? Do you even know where he lives? I know he loves children, insisted Encyclopedia. Otherwise, he wouldn't do what he does for a living. He has an old truck and sells ice cream, candy, and soda, mostly to children, explained Chief Brown to his wife. Why is he called the Balloon Man? She asked. If you buy more than 70 cents worth of candy or anything, he gives you a green and pink balloon for free, answered Encyclopedia. I guess Izzy got tired of blowing up balloons, said Chief Brown quietly. Bobby's father is wealthy. So Izzy... I don't believe it, exclaimed Encyclopedia. You ought to see Izzy stick the end of a balloon in his mouth and huff and puff like a steam engine till it's blown up. He always makes funny faces so the kids will laugh. All right, son, said Chief Brown. I'll accept 3 facts. 1, Izzy is a funny fellow who always blows up balloons with his mouth for laughs. 2, children love him, and he loves children. And 3, Sam Potts saw him kidnap little Bobby Tyler this afternoon. There was an eyewitness? Encyclopedia asked. Mr. Potts came down to headquarters when he heard little Bobby was missing. He gave me a complete statement, said Chief Brown. I made some notes to bring home to you. Want to hear them? Encyclopedia closed his eyes as he always did before using his brain at full power. Go ahead, Dad. Chief Brown took his notebook from his breast pocket. He looked over it for a moment. Then he repeated what Mr. Potts had told him. This morning, Izzy made a stop near Bobby Tyler's house and drove off, or so it appeared, Chief Brown began. Later, Sam Potts and Reverend Bevan were in Sam's backyard, which is right behind the Tylers' walled backyard. Sam saw a pink and green balloon, the kind Izzy gives away, rise into his oak tree, continued Chief Brown. The balloon stuck high among the branches. Because there was no breeze to blow the balloon loose, Sam got a long ladder and climbed into the tree. Chief Brown paused as he turned over a page in his notebook. He went on. From up in his tree, Sam could see the Tylers' 12-foot wall. Sam says that as he freed the balloon, he looked down in the Tylers' yard. He saw Izzy put Bobby into his truck and drive off. Sam told Reverend Bevan what he had just seen. Both men took it for granted that Bobby's mother had said he could go for a ride in Izzy's truck. Later, when the Reverend learned that Bobby was missing, he advised Sam Potts to see me. Chief Brown closed his notebook. An hour after Sam Potts had told me what he had seen, Bobby's father telephoned. He had received a ransom note. It said he must pay $60,000 or never see Bobby again. He would learn to leave the money where to leave the money tomorrow. Chief Brown stopped talking. Both he and Mrs. Brown looked at Encyclopedia. Idaville's ace detective kept his eyes closed in and thought a long time after his father had finished talking. At last he opened his eyes. He asked 2 questions. It seldom took more than 2 to solve a mystery when his father gave him the facts. How does Mr. Potts earn his living? He asked first. His father frowned. Why, I don't know. He's only been in Idaville 2 months. He doesn't own the house behind the Tylers. He just rents it. Encyclopedia's second question was, did Reverend Bevan see the balloon fly into the tree? No, said his father, but Sam Potts did, and the Reverend saw it stuck in the branches. What difference did the balloon make? It solves the case. answered Encyclopedia. Are you starting to figure out something about this balloon, guys? Do you know where Bobby is? Asked his mother anxiously. Is he unhurt? I don't know that, Mom, said Encyclopedia, realizing that he had spoken too quickly. But I know who kidnapped Bobby. We already know that, pointed out Chief Brown. It's Izzy the balloon guy. No, Izzy has probably been kidnapped too, said Encyclopedia. Chief Brown sat back and stared. The guilty man, said Encyclopedia, had to find someone to blame Bobby's kidnapping on. Izzy was chosen, so Izzy has to be kept hidden or he'll deny the crime. What makes you so all-fire certain Izzy didn't kidnap Bobby Tyler? Demanded Chief Brown. Because Mr. Potts kidnapped Bobby, answered Encyclopedia. Sam Potts may be a stranger in Idaville, but that doesn't make him a kidnapper, said Chief Brown angrily. And don't forget, Reverend Bevan was right there with him. Mr. Potts wanted him there, said Encyclopedia. The Reverend was a perfect witness, but the Reverend couldn't see over the wall into Bobby's backyard. He had to accept what Mr. Potts up in the tree said he saw. Are you telling me that Sam Potts used the Reverend? Said Chief Brown. He did, said Encyclopedia. I'm sorry, son, said Chief Brown. You just don't have any reason for saying Mr. Potts lied about seeing Izzy put Bobby into his truck. I have a very good reason, Dad, said Encyclopedia. Mr. Potts might have gotten away with the kidnapping and collected a $60,000 ransom, but he overlooked one simple fact about Izzy. What had Mr. Potts overlooked? Think about that. That was a tricky one. But you got to think about balloons. Because the key, he said, was in the balloon. You thinking? All right. Mr. Potts overlooked the fact that Izzy, remember, he always blew up his green and pink balloons with his mouth. That is, the balloons had nothing but breath or air in them. Now, balloons that just have your breath in them, they do not rise up into a tree. In fact, they sink down to the earth, right? When you blow a balloon and you tie it falls right to the ground. The only way a balloon could float up in the air is if it has helium in it. Encyclopedia immediately realized that Mr. Potts had planted the balloon in the tree ahead of time, and then he told the Reverend he had just seen it. This gave Mr. Potts a chance to climb up the ladder. Looking over the 12-foot wall, he pretended to see Izzy kidnapping little Bobby. Encyclopedia knew Mr. Potts must have kidnapped both Izzy and Bobby earlier during the day. When Chief Brown heard this, he went to Mr. Potts' house. He found Bobby and Izzy tied up. Izzy's truck was hidden in Mr. Potts' garage. Caught, Mr. Potts confessed. He had rented the house behind the Taylors in order to kidnap Bobby and hold him for the ransom money. Were you able to figure it out? If you were, let me know in the comments if you're able to figure it out before I read it. That was tricky. I don't know if I would have gotten that without reading it. All right, see you next time.